Hi, this is Bryan Hyde, and I just want to bring you up to speed on some of the developments this afternoon. The court case moved forward, and the prosecution was actually able to call their first witness this afternoon. And this was very interesting. When they called their first witness, her name was Mary Joanne Rugwell. Mary Joanne Rugwell was formerly the director of the BLM for the southern part of Nevada. And she was, I guess her history goes back there a ways. She had talked about, some of the BLM's past history with Cliven. But this was the thing that I found really, really interesting, was when the map of her area was put up there in the courtroom and she was asked to point out where Hoover Dam was, she couldn't do it. Now, this is not to, put her down in any way, but do you see the disconnect? I mean, how better to illustrate the disconnect of a bureaucracy or the people within a bureaucracy than to say, oh yes, this is my area, this is where I have responsibility, and can you show us the most iconic, most visited landmark, next to Las Vegas there on the map? No, I can't. So if you wonder, where's the disconnect between federal bureaucrats and the people who actually live here in the West, this is probably as good an example as you're going to find, and it was the first witness that the government called to the stand. So the BLM, she said, did a cattle survey, and this was one of the other interesting things that came up there. They wanted to know how many cattle are out there grazing on BLM land, and she testified that they found, I think there was cattle grazing all the way from Gold Butte, which is the area where Cliven's cattle had grazed, all the way down to Lake Mead. And the impression that gives is, well, can you see, Cliven has let his cattle go feral and they're just wandering, hither, tither, and yon. They're everywhere, all over. Except Brett Whipple, who's Cliven's defense attorney, objected. And when he pressed Mary on this, she had to admit, not all of those cattle belonged to Cliven Bundy. So we don't know how many of them were his, but do you see the rhetorical sleight of hand and the word games and the mind games that come into play when the prosecution is trying to make its case? We have to make this look as bad as possible, and yet sometimes it's half-truths or just partial truths or things that would lead people to believe something that may not necessarily be the case. This is why I guess you have to be really thankful for good attorneys, or in the case of Ryan Bundy, individuals who are very dedicated and willing to stand up and to represent themselves. So we don't know how many of the cows were Cliven's. That could come up in cross-examination. It probably will. But it's just another example of the pattern of exaggeration and sometimes shading truth just so to make it appear that, the only unreasonable party in this whole dispute is the Bundys, when nothing could be further from the truth. There was one kind of amusing thing that came up here, and I thought this was classic. I don't know what message this sends, but Stephen Myrie made a big deal out of the fact that so many of the supporters who came to help the Bundys in 2014 came wearing camouflage. And his take was, as if that is something evil in and of itself. Why would you wear camouflage? What purpose would that possibly serve? Well, today, one of the jurors showed up today wearing a camouflage top. And, I don't know if that's, a thumb in your eye or whatever that may be, but at the very least, it's a very humorous coincidence, and at best, maybe it is kind of a thumb in the eye on the part of one juror who's just like, really? Is that how it's supposed to be? So tomorrow is going to be a shortened day. Apparently, it's only a half day in court. It will be tomorrow afternoon. We will still have our regular updates at 1:30 and 4:30 Nevada time, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak preview. Tomorrow, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Ammon Bundy and why is it that he was deemed too dangerous for pretrial release. There is one quick thing I want to point out here, and others have pointed this out. Ryan Bundy brilliantly explained how upside down the system was. I believe this was yesterday in court. He talked about how people who take the plea deal, people who plead guilty to something, are granted pretrial release, while those who are presumed innocent and who maintain their innocence are kept imprisoned. And Ryan spoke truth to power and told the judge that's very upside down. That's not how it should be. But I want to talk about Ammon, who was denied pretrial release, and I want to explore that a little bit tomorrow and talk about what a positive thing that is in one sense. I mean, it's sad he's not with his family right at this moment, but it also tells you that there's something about Ammon that the government takes very seriously. And any of you who know him know it's not that he's a dangerous, horrible individual. It's something. It's actually something very positive. So we'll talk about that in our update tomorrow at 1:30. Have a great night, and we'll look forward to checking in with you tomorrow.